Welcome to Life Turns, where every story touches the heart and reminds us how powerful love, family, and connection truly are. Today, I want to share a very special parenting story. Something that began as an ordinary evening at the kitchen table, but turned into a memory I will never forget. It's a story about helping my son with his homework, and how his words later left me completely speechless. That evening, the house was quiet except for the sound of pencils scratching against paper and the occasional sigh from my son. He was sitting across from me, his little brow furrowed in concentration. The math problem seemed endless to him, and I could tell he was growing frustrated. As a parent, you want nothing more than to see your child succeed, but more importantly, you want them to feel supported. I gently slid my chair closer to his side and whispered, "Don't worry, we'll figure this out together." He looked up at me with those big, tired eyes, and I saw a mixture of doubt and hope. It reminded me of the times in my own childhood when I felt overwhelmed by something small but important, and how a kind word could change everything. I placed my hand on his shoulder and told him, "You don't have to do this alone. I'm right here." And with that, we began breaking down the problems, one step at a time. At first, he resisted. He thought he was supposed to know everything on his own, that asking for help was somehow wrong. But I reminded him, "Even grown-ups ask for help. Even I do. Learning isn't about knowing it all, it's about growing together." Slowly, his shoulders relaxed, and I could see the tension fading away. He began to trust the process. As we worked, something beautiful happened. The numbers that once felt impossible to him began to make sense. Each correct answer brought a spark of pride to his face. Every small victory was like a light switch turning on in his heart. I could feel my own chest swelling with joy, not just because he was learning, but because we were sharing this moment, side by side, heart to heart. I realized that helping with homework wasn't really about the math or the science. It was about showing him that he wasn't alone in the struggles of life. It was about teaching him patience, resilience, and the courage to keep going when things feel tough. The night went on longer than expected. Papers scattered across the table, eraser dust on his notebook, and 2 cups of cocoa cooling beside us. By the end, he leaned back with a huge smile on his face and said proudly, "I get it now, Mom. I really get it." And in that instant, my heart melted. His confidence had bloomed right in front of me, and I knew these small victories would one day shape the man he'd become. But the true surprise, the part that touched me deeper than anything else, came later that night. After homework was finished, after dinner was eaten, after bedtime stories were read, he suddenly came into my room. His tiny footsteps were soft, but his words carried a weight that I will never forget. He stood by my bed, his voice gentle but sure, and he said, "Mom, thank you for helping me. You're the reason I believe I can do hard things." I froze for a moment, caught between shock and tears. His words were simple, yet they pierced my heart in the most beautiful way. All the doubts I sometimes carried as a parent, the moments when I questioned whether I was doing enough, suddenly vanished. My son, in his own innocent way, had given me the greatest gift, reassurance that love and presence truly matter. I couldn't sleep that night after hearing those words from my son. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over again in my head. "You're the reason I believe I can do hard things." Such a small sentence, but it felt like an entire book written on my heart. Parenting is often filled with uncertainty. You never really know if you're saying the right things, teaching the right lessons, or guiding your child the way they need. And yet, in that one sentence, my son let me know that my presence was enough. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through the curtains, I found myself watching him eat his breakfast with a new sense of wonder. Every bite of cereal, every innocent question, every laugh felt like a gift. I thought about how quickly children grow, how the days of holding tiny hands and explaining simple math problems are fleeting. One day he'll be taller than me. One day his voice will deepen. One day he'll walk into a world where I can't protect him from everything. But in that moment, I realized that what I give him now, the love, the patience, the encouragement, will stay with him long after the homework pages are forgotten. Later that day, I asked him what he meant by what he said last night. He shrugged, his cheeks turning pink, and replied, "I just feel like when you're with me, nothing's too big. Even if I don't know the answer, I know we'll figure it out together." That was when it hit me. Children don't just learn facts and figures. They learn trust, they learn courage, and most of all, they learn how to see themselves through the eyes of someone who believes in them. The truth is, I hadn't always been that patient. There were nights when I was tired, stressed, and short-tempered. Times when I thought, "Just finish your homework quickly," instead of sitting beside him. Times when I felt guilty afterward, knowing that I had let exhaustion steal the chance to be present. But his words reminded me that children remember the moment of frustration. They don't hold on to the times we stumble as parents. They hold on to the love that shines through, even in our imperfections. That evening, we sat together again, this time working on a school project about animals. He had to draw and write a short description, and I could see the same hesitation in his eyes at first. But then he smiled and said, "I think I can do this now. I just need to break it down, like you showed me." My heart swelled with pride as I realized he wasn't just learning schoolwork, he was learning life skills. He was learning how to face challenges, step by step, without giving up. I watched his little hands draw carefully, his tongue sticking out in concentration, and I thought about the bigger picture. Parenting isn't about grand gestures. It's about these small, ordinary evenings that turn into extraordinary memories. It's about showing up, even when you're tired. It's about holding space for your child's struggles and reminding them that they're not alone. When we finished, he proudly held up his project and said, "See? I told you I could do it." That sparkle in his eyes was brighter than any grade, any award, or any praise he could receive from school. It was the sparkle of self-belief, planted by the seed of love. Later that week, something unexpected happened at school. His teacher pulled me aside during pickup and said, "I've noticed a change in him. He seems more confident, more willing to try even when he's not sure. Did something happen at home?" I smiled, holding back tears, and simply replied, "We've just been working together." She nodded knowingly and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep it up. It's working." That car ride home was quiet, but inside my heart was loud with gratitude. It was proof that the little moments we share with our children ripple out into their world in ways we might never fully see. A few evenings of patience, a few kind words, a few shared victories, and suddenly he was walking taller, speaking louder, and believing in himself more than ever. That night, as I tucked him into bed, he whispered, "Mom, I like it when you help me. Not because I need it, but because it feels like we're a team." Tears stung my eyes as I kissed his forehead. A team. That was exactly what we were. Not a parent towering over a child, but two people walking side by side, learning from each other. What he didn't know was that I was learning just as much from him as he was from me. He was teaching me patience, reminding me of the beauty in slowing down, showing me that love doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Every hug, every thank you, every quiet moment at the table was shaping me into a better version of myself. I began to realize that children don't just need parents, they transform us. They soften our hearts, open our eyes, and remind us of the innocence we once carried. And sometimes, in their small voices and simple words, they give us wisdom that even adulthood can't provide. That week, I found myself more mindful in everything I did. When he asked a question, I listened fully. When he laughed, I laughed with him. When he stumbled, I reached out without hesitation. And every time, I remembered his words, You're the reason I believe I can do hard things." It became a mantra for me as well. Whenever life felt overwhelming, whenever I doubted myself, I thought of his innocent trust. If my child could see me as a source of strength, then maybe I needed to see myself that way too. Parenting wasn't just about raising him, it was about growing together, hand in hand, one step at a time. As the days passed, I kept thinking about how much that small moment had changed me. One evening of homework turned into a lesson for life, not just for my son, but for me as well. Parenting is often painted as us teaching our children everything they need to know. But the truth? Sometimes, they teach us the most important lessons without even realizing it. One night, as we sat on the couch watching a movie together, I noticed how he leaned against me so comfortably, as if my presence was his safe place. It struck me then, children don't just need answers, they need assurance. They don't just need guidance. They need someone who believes in them enough to remind them they're capable. That belief becomes their foundation for facing the world. I thought back to my own childhood, remembering times when I struggled with homework. There were nights when I felt alone with my frustrations, and I promised myself as a parent that I'd always try to be different. Still, life is messy, and I knew I wasn't perfect. But hearing my son's words had reassured me. Perfection isn't required, presence is. One Saturday morning, while making pancakes, my son came running into the kitchen with a crumpled paper in his hand. "Mom, look!" he shouted excitedly. It was a quiz from school, and he had scored higher than he ever had before. The grade itself didn't matter nearly as much as the pride on his face. "I did it," he said, beaming. "I figured it out just like we practiced." I hugged him tightly, feeling tears sting my eyes again. That wasn't just a grade, it was proof that his belief in himself was growing stronger. But what touched me the most was what he said after. He whispered, "I knew I could do it because I remembered you telling me not to give up." Those words hit me harder than any success story I had ever read. It reminded me that children carry our voices with them, even when we're not around. They remember what we say in the quiet moments, the little pep talks, the gentle encouragements. And those words can become their inner strength when they face challenges alone. That evening, as I tucked him in, I told him something I hadn't said before. "You're teaching me too, you know." He looked at me with surprise and asked, "Teaching you what?" I smiled and replied, "You're teaching me how important it is to keep showing up, to be patient, and to believe in myself too." He giggled, hiding under the covers, but I could see the joy in his eyes. In his world, maybe he thought parents knew everything. But the truth was, I was learning as much from him as he was from me. Over time, this simple cycle became part of our lives. Homework wasn't a battle anymore. It was a partnership. Challenges weren't something to fear. They were opportunities to grow. And love wasn't just spoken in "I love yous." It was spoken in patience, encouragement, and the willingness to sit side by side through struggles. Then one evening, months later, something unexpected happened. After dinner, while we were cleaning up, my son suddenly said, "Mom, one day when I'm a dad, I want to help my kids the way you help me." My hands froze on the dish I was washing, and I turned to look at him. His voice was so matter-of-fact, so sincere, and my heart nearly burst with emotion. That's when I realized the cycle was bigger than just me and him. The love we show our children doesn't stop with them. It flows forward, shaping the kind of people they'll become, the kind of parents they'll be, the kind of world they'll build. I hugged him tightly, whispering, "You're going to be an amazing dad someday." He grinned, not fully understanding the weight of what he had just said, but I knew. I knew that every moment of showing up, every small act of patience, every word of encouragement, it was all planting seeds that would grow into something bigger than I could ever imagine. From that day on, I carried myself differently. I stopped worrying so much about being the perfect parent. I started focusing on being the present parent. I realized my son didn't need me to have all the answers. He just needed me to sit beside him, to remind him that challenges can be faced, and to believe in him even when he doubted himself. That was enough. The night that started with math problems had ended with life lessons. Lessons about love, patience, belief, and the unbreakable bond between a parent and child. It showed me that parenting isn't measured in big moments or perfect days. It's measured in the small, quiet times when we show up, when we listen, when we encourage, when we love. And if I could share one message with every parent listening to this story, it would be this: your presence matters more than your perfection. Your child doesn't need you to know everything. They need you to believe in them. And when you do, you'll be amazed at how much they start to believe in themselves. As I finish telling this story today, I can still hear his little voice in my heart. "You're the reason I believe I can do hard things." Those words will stay with me forever, not just as a reminder of who I am to him, but as a promise of who he will become. A strong, confident, loving person, because he knows he was never alone in his journey. And that, my friends, is the beauty of parenting. Not in perfection, not in knowing it all, but in walking hand in hand through the challenges and finding strength together. Because sometimes, the greatest lessons we give our children are also the greatest gifts they give back to us.